The year is 48 BC. A young woman is being smuggled into one of the most heavily guarded palaces in the ancient world, wrapped inside a linen sack carried over the shoulder of a single servant. Outside, soldiers loyal to her own brother are hunting her. If they catch her, she's dead. But she's not running away. She's running toward the most powerful man on earth, Julius Caesar, with nothing but her voice and her mind as weapons. Her name is Cleopatra. And almost everything you think you know about her is a lie. This is her real story. She was Greek. More specifically, she was Macedonian, a descendant of one of Alexander the Great's generals, a man named Ptolemy. When Alexander died in 323 BC, his empire was carved up among his closest companions. Ptolemy claimed Egypt, and his family, the Ptolemaic dynasty, ruled it for nearly 300 years. Here's the thing about the Ptolemies, though. For 3 centuries, they ruled Egypt without ever learning Egyptian. They spoke Greek. They lived like Greek royals. They married each other. Brothers married sisters, uncles married nieces, to keep power inside the family. And they barely interacted with the people they governed. Cleopatra was different. She was born in 69 BC in Alexandria, at the time one of the greatest cities in the world. And from a young age, she was extraordinary. She studied at the Great Library of Alexandria. She learned mathematics, philosophy, and astronomy. She was trained in the art of rhetoric, the skill of speaking persuasively. But the most remarkable thing? She learned languages, lots of them. Ancient historians say she spoke up to 9 languages, including Egyptian, Ethiopian, Hebrew, Arabic, and Parthian. She was the first and last Ptolemaic ruler to actually speak the language of her own people. Think about that for a moment. 300 years of rulers who couldn't speak to their own citizens. And then Cleopatra shows up, fluent in 9 languages, reading Egyptian religious texts, participating in local ceremonies. She wasn't just a queen, she was a strategist, someone who understood that real power comes from being understood. When Cleopatra's father died in 51 BC, he left the kingdom to Cleopatra and her younger brother, Ptolemy XIII. She was 18, he was 10. Egyptian law required them to rule together and to marry. But a 10-year-old boy doesn't really run a kingdom. His advisors did. And those advisors saw Cleopatra as a threat. Too smart, too ambitious, too independent. Within 2 years, they pushed her out. She was exiled, forced to flee to Syria, stripped of her throne. Most people in her position would have given up. Cleopatra raised an army. But before she could fight her way back, something unexpected happened. Rome's civil war spilled into Egypt. Julius Caesar, 52 years old, the most powerful military commander alive, arrived in Alexandria, chasing his rival Pompey. When Caesar landed, Ptolemy's advisors made a terrible mistake. They murdered Pompey and presented his severed head to Caesar, thinking it would please him. It didn't. Caesar was furious. He occupied the royal palace and summoned both Cleopatra and Ptolemy to come and settle their dispute under his authority. Ptolemy's soldiers controlled the city. They had orders to arrest or kill Cleopatra on sight. There was no way for her to walk through the front door, so she didn't use the front door. According to Plutarch, the ancient Greek historian who gives us the most detailed account of her life, Cleopatra had herself smuggled into the palace at night, hidden inside a large linen sack. Some later translations turn this into a carpet, And that's the version most people remember. Either way, the scene is extraordinary. A servant named Apollodorus carried her on his shoulder, past the guards, straight into Caesar's private quarters. When the sack was unrolled, out stepped the 21-year-old Queen of Egypt. Caesar was captivated, not by her beauty, but by her boldness. Here was a woman who had risked her life, outsmarted an entire army, and presented herself with absolute confidence. Within hours, they were allies. Within weeks, they were lovers. Now, here's where the lies really start. If you picture Cleopatra, you probably imagine someone who looks like Elizabeth Taylor. Stunning, glamorous, irresistible. That image comes from Hollywood, not from history. Ancient coins, the most reliable portraits we have, show a woman with a strong nose, a firm chin, and an intense expression. She looks powerful, not pretty in the way movies suggest. And Plutarch, who wrote about her roughly a century after her death, said something fascinating. He wrote that her beauty was, and I'm paraphrasing, not altogether incomparable. In other words, she wasn't the most beautiful woman in the room. But then he added that her real power was in her voice, her conversation, and the force of her personality. He described her presence as having something almost magical about it, an irresistible charm that made people want to listen to her. So why do we remember her as a seductress, a woman who used her body to control powerful men? Because the Romans wanted us to. After Cleopatra's death, the Roman Emperor Augustus, her greatest enemy, launched what we might today call a propaganda campaign. He needed to justify his war against her. So Roman writers painted her as a drunken, manipulative foreigner who had bewitched Rome's greatest generals. They called her a whore queen. They never even used her name, just the woman, or that one. It worked. For 2,000 years, that Roman version of the story was the only version anyone told. But medieval Arab scholars remembered a different Cleopatra. In their records, she appears as a mathematician, a chemist, and a philosopher. Some sources suggest she wrote scientific books. She wasn't remembered for her love affairs. She was remembered for her intellect. 2,000 years of propaganda. And the truth was hiding in plain sight. Let's not pretend Cleopatra was a saint. She was ruthless, absolutely willing to eliminate anyone who threatened her power. After Caesar defeated Ptolemy, the 13th's forces at the Battle of the Nile, her young brother tried to flee. He drowned in the river. Some historians believe his own heavy golden armor pulled him under. Cleopatra didn't mourn for long. She married her other younger brother, Ptolemy XIV, as the law required. Then she had a son with Caesar, a boy she named Caesarion, meaning Little Caesar. When Caesar was assassinated in Rome in 44 BC, Cleopatra returned to Egypt and, according to many historians, had Ptolemy XIV poisoned. She replaced him with her 3-year-old son as co-ruler. She also engineered the execution of her sister, Arsinoe, who she considered a dangerous rival. Brothers, sisters, anyone who stood between Cleopatra and her vision for Egypt became expendable. This was the Ptolemaic way. Murder and power struggles were family tradition. She just happened to be better at it than everyone else. But there's something important here. Cleopatra wasn't killing for personal pleasure. She was fighting to keep Egypt independent at a time when Rome was swallowing every kingdom in the Mediterranean. Every decision she made, every alliance, every marriage, every act of violence was calculated to keep her country free. She was playing a game where losing meant the end of Egyptian civilization as she knew it. After Caesar's death, the Roman world split between two men, Mark Antony and Octavian. Antony controlled the eastern half of the empire. He needed money and grain. Egypt had both. In 41 BC, Antony summoned Cleopatra to the city of Tarsus. She could have simply showed up. Instead, she staged one of the most spectacular entrances in history. She arrived on a golden barge with purple sails. The oars were made of silver. She was dressed as Isis, the Egyptian goddess she had claimed to embody. Attendants fanned her while sweet incense filled the air. The whole thing was designed to send a message. I am not your subject. I am a goddess, and you need me more than I need you. It worked. Antony was overwhelmed. They became lovers, then partners, then, according to some accounts, husband and wife. They had 3 children together, the twins Alexander Helios and Cleopatra Selene, and a younger son, Ptolemy Philadelphus. For nearly a decade, Cleopatra and Antony built something extraordinary. In a grand ceremony known as the Donations of Alexandria, they crowned their children as rulers of vast territories. Antony proclaimed Caesarion to be Caesar's rightful heir, a direct challenge to Octavian, who had been adopted by Caesar as his legal son. This was the breaking point. Octavian declared war, not on Antony, but on Cleopatra. He portrayed her as a foreign enemy who had corrupted a Roman general. In 31 BC, their combined fleet met Octavian's navy at the Battle of Actium off the coast of Greece. It was a disaster. Cleopatra's ships broke through the enemy line and retreated. Antony followed her. Their allies surrendered. Within a year, Octavian's forces reached Alexandria. Antony, hearing a false report that Cleopatra was dead, fell on his own sword. Wounded but still alive, he was carried to her. He died in her arms. And now we come to the most famous image of all, Cleopatra pressing a venomous snake to her chest. You've seen it in paintings, in movies, in statues. It's one of the most iconic death scenes in history. But it probably never happened. Plutarch, our main source, admitted openly that nobody really knew how she died. He mentioned the story about an asp, a type of cobra, being smuggled into her room in a basket of figs. But he also wrote that she may have used a poisoned hairpin or a toxic ointment that she kept hidden. Modern historians lean toward the poison theory. Cleopatra was known to study toxicology, the science of poisons. She may have spent years preparing for this very moment, keeping a fast-acting poison close just in case. What we do know is this: Cleopatra chose to die on her own terms. She refused to be dragged through the streets of Rome as a prisoner, a spectacle designed to humiliate her. Instead, she ended her life with the same control and precision that defined everything she did. She was 39 years old. She had ruled Egypt for 21 years. After her death, Octavian ordered the execution of Caesarion, her son with Julius Caesar. The boy was only 17. With him died the last of the Ptolemaic line. Egypt became a Roman province. An entire civilization, stretching back 3,000 years, lost its independence forever. For 2,000 years, the story of Cleopatra was written by the people who destroyed her. They turned a brilliant strategist into a seductress. They reduced a 9-language polyglot, someone who speaks many languages, to a footnote in the stories of Roman men. But the real Cleopatra was more fascinating than any myth, a scholar, a politician, a survivor, a woman who held together a crumbling kingdom through intellect, courage, and sheer force of will. The most lied about woman in history deserves to have her real story told. And now you've heard it. If this story taught you something, or taught you some new English words along the way, subscribe to Storied English. Every video is a new story, told in clear English, designed to make you a better speaker without ever feeling like a lesson. Download the free story companion for this video. It's in the description. It has the key vocabulary, a sentence pattern you can steal, and a question I'd love for you to answer in the comments. I'll see you in the next story.